stepmother sells her own stepson to a millionaire. When she discovers why he wanted to buy him, the revelation forces her to make a heart-wrenching decision. Jonah sat cross-legged on the floor of his room, surrounded by a sea of colors. Sketchbooks were piled high, filled with drawings of people, places, and dreams yet to be realized. The sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow that danced on the pages, illuminating his aspirations. In his mind, he painted a picture of his future, an artist in a bustling city, his work displayed in galleries, people admiring his creations. It was a life filled with freedom and expression, where he could be true to himself. But the sound of footsteps broke through his daydream. Jonah looked up to see Vivian, his stepmother, standing in the doorway. Her face was drawn, eyes shadowed with worry. The vibrant colors of his imagination faded as the atmosphere shifted. The weight of her presence filled the room, heavy and oppressive, like a storm cloud ready to burst. "Jonah," she began, her voice strained. "We need to talk." Jonah's heart sank. He could see the tension in her posture, the way her hands trembled slightly. "What is it?" he asked, trying to mask the unease creeping into his voice. Vivian stepped further into the room, glancing around at the sketches that filled the walls. "Things have been difficult," she admitted, her eyes flicking away from him. "I've been trying to figure out a way to make things better for us." "What do you mean?" Jonah questioned, his brow furrowing. A knot formed in his stomach as he sensed the gravity of her words. "I have a plan," she said, taking a deep breath. "I'm going to sell you to Marcus Hargrove." The words hit Jonah like a slap. "Sell me," he echoed, disbelief flooding his mind. "You can't be serious." Vivian nodded, her expression a mix of desperation and determination. "It's the only way, Jonah. He has the resources to help us, to secure our future," she explained, her voice rising with urgency. "Think of it as a chance for a better life." Jonah shook his head, his heart racing. "You're talking about selling me like I'm some object. How could you even consider this?" "It's not like that," Vivian shot back, her frustration boiling over. "I'm doing this for us. I'm trying to keep a roof over our heads. We can't keep living like this, Jonah. Don't you see?" Jonah felt the world around him tilt. He couldn't comprehend how his dreams had turned into a bargaining chip. "But I'm not a piece of property. I'm your son," he shouted, his voice cracking with emotion. Vivian's eyes softened, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. I know. But I'm scared. I don't know what else to do." Her voice lowered, trembling now. "We're drowning in debt. I thought this could save us." Jonah stepped back, his mind racing. The room felt smaller, suffocating. He glanced at his sketches, his dreams, now tainted by something dark and twisted. "You don't understand what you're asking me to give up," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "My life, my dreams." "Sometimes we have to make sacrifices," Vivian replied, her voice thick with emotion. "I never wanted it to come to this, Jonah, but desperate times call for desperate measures." Jonah's heart ached as he grappled with the reality of the situation. He looked into Vivian's eyes, searching for the woman who had once been a source of comfort. "This isn't just about money, Vivian. This is about me, my identity, my future." Silence hung in the air between them, heavy and charged. Jonah's mind whirled with questions. How could everything he had ever wanted be slipping away so quickly? How could his life take such a dark turn in an instant? The weight of his dreams pressed down on him, mingled with the fear of losing everything he held dear. "Jonah." Vivian's voice broke the silence, filled with a mix of pleading and resignation. "I need you to understand. I'm doing this because I love you." As Jonah stood there, a battle raged within him. The vibrant colors of his dreams felt like they were slipping away, replaced by shadows of despair. His heart pounded in his chest, and he wondered, could he truly accept a future that seemed to hold nothing but darkness? Jonah sat on the edge of his bed, his heart heavy with the weight of his mother's words. The visions of bright colors and swirling sketches faded, replaced by the shadow of his stepmother, Vivian. He remembered the laughter he shared with his late father, the moments filled with encouragement and love. Those memories now felt tainted, overshadowed by the dark path Vivian had chosen. As he stared at the sketches pinned on his wall, Jonah felt a surge of longing. "I just want to be free," he whispered to himself. He thought of the days spent painting under the sun, the joy of creating something beautiful. But now, that dream seemed to slip further away with each passing moment. Jonah's thoughts were interrupted when he heard Vivian's footsteps approaching. She entered the room, her expression a mix of fatigue and worry. "Jonah, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling slightly. He turned to face her, a mix of anger and confusion swirling within him. "Talk about what? About selling me?" he snapped, his heart racing. "You can't be serious." Vivian's eyes flashed with desperation. "I'm doing this for us, Jonah. You don't understand how hard it has been." She took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping. "I can't keep us afloat alone. The bills, the debts, they're suffocating me." Jonah clenched his fists, feeling as though the walls were closing in. "But you're willing to sell your own son? What kind of future is that?" He felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes, a mixture of hurt and disbelief. "I had no choice," Vivian replied, her voice rising. "You think I want this? I'm scared. I'm scared of losing everything. You don't know what it's like to be desperate." Jonah's heart softened at her admission, but the fear of losing his dreams loomed larger. "But what about my life? My dreams? I don't want to be someone's property." He paused, searching for the right words. "If I agree to this, I'll lose who I am." Vivian stepped closer, her eyes filling with tears. "I never wanted to hurt you. Your father, he believed in you. He wanted you to be an artist. But what good is that if we can't survive?" Her voice cracked, revealing the pain behind her tough exterior. Jonah took a deep breath, trying to hold back his own emotions. "I miss him too. But selling me won't bring him back. It won't fix anything." He turned his gaze to the floor, grappling with his own turmoil. "How can you even think this is the solution?" Vivian wiped her eyes, her expression shifting from desperation to a deep sadness. "I don't know what else to do, Jonah. I feel lost. I thought you'd understand." Her voice softened, revealing the cracks in her armor. "I thought you'd want to help your family." Jonah felt a pang of guilt pierce through his anger. He wanted to help her, to ease her burdens, but at what cost? "I do want to help," he said quietly. "But not like this. Not by giving up my future." Silence hung between them, heavy with unspoken words. Jonah's thoughts raced. He wanted to scream, to run away, but instead, he stood there, facing the reality of their situation. "What if I refuse? What happens then?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Vivian looked at him, her expression a mixture of fear and resolve. "Then I don't know. I don't know what we will do, but I can't lose you, Jonah. I can't." He felt the weight of her words settle over him. Jonah wanted to support her, to find a way out of this mess, but he knew he could not sacrifice his identity. "I need time to think," he finally said, his heart aching with uncertainty. As Jonah turned away, tears streamed down his face. He felt torn between love for his stepmother and the need to preserve his dreams. The room felt colder now, filled with the shadows of choices yet to be made. Each breath was a reminder of the impossible weight of choice that lay before him, a choice that could change everything. Jonah stood outside the grand estate, his heart pounding in his chest. The mansion loomed before him, a symbol of everything he feared and everything he did not understand. Reluctantly, he took a deep breath and stepped inside, hoping to find a way to escape the nightmare that had become his life. The interior was lavish, filled with expensive furniture and art that seemed to whisper stories of wealth and power. Jonah felt small and out of place, a mere shadow among the bright colors and shining surfaces. As he walked further into the house, he could hear the sound of footsteps approaching. Marcus Hargrove appeared, tall and imposing, with an air of confidence that made Jonah uneasy. The man's sharp features and piercing gaze seemed to size him up in an instant. Jonah swallowed hard, unsure of what to say or do. "Ah, you must be Jonah," Marcus said, his voice smooth yet commanding. "I've heard a lot about you." Jonah nodded, trying to find his voice. I didn't want to be here. My stepmother—" "Vivian," Marcus interrupted, a flicker of understanding crossing his face. "She is in a difficult position, but you have to understand, this is not just about her. It's about what you want as well." Jonah clenched his fists, feeling a mix of anger and confusion. "What I want to be free. I want to be an artist. I don't want to be sold." Marcus studied him for a moment, as if searching for something in Jonah's eyes. "And what if I told you that I can offer you a different kind of freedom? A chance to explore your art without the burdens you carry?" Jonah felt a spark of curiosity amid his frustration. "What do you mean?" "Think of it this way," Marcus said, leaning closer. "You could have the resources to pursue your dreams. You could travel, learn from the best, and create without limits. Isn't that worth considering?" "But at what cost?" Jonah asked, his voice trembling. "I don't want to be a pawn in someone else's game." Marcus sighed, his expression softening. "You're right to be cautious. I have my own struggles, Jonah. I may seem powerful, but I am lonely. I lost my family, and I understand what it means to feel trapped in one's circumstances." Jonah was taken aback. This was not the man he had expected. He had only heard stories about Marcus, the man who had everything and yet seemed to want more. "You're lonely?" Jonah echoed, trying to wrap his mind around it. "Yes," Marcus admitted, his voice growing quieter. "We're not so different, you and I. We both seek connection, purpose, and a way out of our current lives." Jonah felt a flicker of empathy for Marcus, but it quickly turned into doubt. "But selling myself to you, that doesn't feel right. I'd be losing part of who I am." "You wouldn't lose yourself," Marcus countered, his tone urgent. "You would gain a chance to become more than you ever imagined. Just think about it." Jonah took a step back, needing space to breathe. His mind raced with conflicting thoughts. Could he really trust this man? Was there a way to find freedom without losing his identity? "I need time to think," he finally said, his voice steady. "Of course," Marcus replied, his expression unreadable. "Take all the time you need. But remember, this is about your future, Jonah. Don't let fear dictate your choices." As Jonah turned to leave, he felt a weight in his chest. The conversation had opened doors he never thought possible, yet it had also left him feeling more lost than ever. He stepped out of the mansion and into the cool evening air, the shadows of the estate fading behind him. Walking away, Jonah's thoughts turned to his dreams of art and the family he had once known. The encounter with Marcus had challenged everything he believed about himself and what it meant to be a son. In that moment, he realized he was standing at a crossroads, and the choices he made next would shape not only his future, but also the lives of those he cared about. Jonah took a deep breath, looking up at the stars beginning to twinkle in the night sky. He knew he had to find a way to reclaim his identity, even if it meant facing the difficult choices ahead. Jonah stepped through the door of his house, his mind still swirling from the meeting with Marcus. He felt like a balloon, floating high above the ground, but the weight of his thoughts pulled him back down. The colors of his dreams seemed to fade as he walked into the dimly lit living room, where Vivian sat on the couch, her expression unreadable. "Jonah," she started, her voice tense as she looked up at him. "How did it go?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "It was intense. He's not what I expected." Vivian leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" Did he try to convince you to go with him?" "No, it's not that simple," Jonah replied, his heart racing. "He talked about his life, his struggles. He's lonely. I didn't think I would feel sorry for him." Vivian's brow furrowed. "You're not considering his offer, are you?" Jonah took a deep breath, frustration boiling inside him. "You don't understand. I'm stuck between wanting to be free and wanting to help you, but selling myself. I can't do that." Vivian stood up, her voice rising. "You think I want this? You think I wanted to put you in this position? I'm doing what I think is best for us." Jonah shook his head, anger flaring within him. "Best for us? Or best for you? You're putting everything on my shoulders. Do you even care how this affects me?" A silence fell between them, thick and heavy. Vivian's eyes glistened, and Jonah could see the pain behind her fierce exterior. "You think I'm just a monster, don't you? You don't know what I've sacrificed for this family." "What sacrifices?" Jonah shot back, tears stinging the corners of his eyes. "You're willing to sell your own son." Vivian's voice softened, the fight leaving her. "I didn't want to. I thought it would secure our future. I thought you'd be safe." "Safe? You're trapping me." Jonah's voice broke, the weight of his emotions crashing down. "I can't be what you want me to be. I need to be myself." As the words hung in the air, Vivian took a step closer, her expression shifting from anger to vulnerability. "Jonah, I'm scared. I'm scared of losing everything. You don't know what it's like to feel completely alone. I thought if I could just make it through this, things would get better." Jonah's heart softened at her confession. He saw the woman behind the stress and desperation, the woman who had loved him as her own. "Vivian, I want to help, but this isn't the answer. You can't just throw me away like a piece of furniture." Vivian's shoulders slumped, and she looked away, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm sorry. I never wanted it to come to this. I just wanted to provide for us." Jonah stepped closer, feeling a mix of compassion and anger. "I know you want to provide, but this isn't how to do it. You're asking me to give up everything for a chance at security that might not even come." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, her voice trembling. "What do you want from me, Jonah? I'm just trying to survive. I want you to see that we can find another way," he urged, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I want you to fight for us, not against me. We can figure this out together." Vivian looked at him, her expression softening. "You really believe we can find a way?" "I have to believe it," Jonah replied, his heart still pounding, but a flicker of hope igniting within him. "If we don't believe in each other, what do we have?" For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of their confrontation lingering in the air. Jonah could see the struggle in her eyes, and he felt the warmth of their bond, still alive, despite the strain. Vivian took a shaky breath, and for the first time, Jonah felt a glimmer of understanding between them. "I don't want to lose you, Jonah," she whispered, her voice cracking. "And I don't want to lose you either," he replied, reaching out to grasp her hand. "But we have to be honest with each other, no more secrets." As they stood there, holding on to each other, Jonah realized that their journey was just beginning. The road ahead would be tough, but together, they might just find a way to navigate the storm. Days passed, each one heavy with the weight of Jonah's thoughts. He felt trapped in a world that was no longer his own. The vibrant colors of his dreams faded into dull shades of despair as he considered the reality of his situation. In the quiet of his room, surrounded by his sketches, he began to formulate a plan. Jonah knew he needed to reclaim his freedom, even if it meant risking the bond he had with Vivian. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through his window, Jonah sat at his desk. He picked up a pencil, tapping the end against the table, trying to gather his thoughts. "I can't let this happen," he murmured to himself. "I need to confront Marcus. I need to tell him that I won't be sold." With a deep breath, Jonah stood up. The decision felt daunting, but he was determined. He walked out of his room and down the hallway, where Vivian was sitting on the couch, her face buried in her hands. The sight of her filled him with a mix of sadness and anger. He hesitated, but the thought of his dreams being sold away pushed him forward. "Vivian," Jonah said, his voice steady but soft. She looked up, her eyes red and tired. "What is it, Jonah?" "I need to talk to you. It's important." He took a seat across from her, searching for the right words. "What is it?" she asked, her tone weary. "I'm going to confront Marcus. I'm going to tell him I won't go through with your plan." Jonah's heart raced as he spoke. He had always been the one to follow, the one to bend to the will of others. But now, he felt a spark of resolve. Vivian's expression shifted from surprise to disbelief. "You can't be serious. Jonah, do you understand what you're saying? This is our future we're talking about." "I know, but I can't just give myself away like that. I won't be sold," he replied, frustration creeping into his voice. "I need to live my life on my own terms." "Do you think this is easy for me?" Vivian exclaimed, her voice rising. "I'm doing this for us. I've sacrificed so much already. You don't know what it's like to be in my position." Jonah's chest tightened. "But what about my dreams? What about my life? I can't just throw it all away because you're scared." Her face softened for a moment, revealing a glimpse of vulnerability. "I'm scared too, Jonah. I've lost so much, and I don't want to lose you too. I thought this would secure our future." Tears brimmed in her eyes. The tension hung in the air, thick and heavy. Jonah realized that this confrontation was not just about him, it was about them both. "Vivian, I understand you're scared, but selling me isn't the answer. There has to be another way." She looked away, wiping her tears. "I don't know if there is. I don't have any other options." Jonah took a deep breath, feeling a mix of empathy and determination. "Then let's find another option together. I want to help you, but I can't do it if I'm trapped in a life that isn't mine." Vivian looked back at him, her expression shifting. "You really believe you can change this? You think you can confront Marcus and make him listen?" "I have to try," Jonah replied, feeling the weight of his resolve. "I can't live like this anymore. I need to be free." As the words left his mouth, Jonah felt a sense of clarity wash over him. He was ready to face Marcus, ready to demand a different future. Vivian remained silent, her eyes searching Jonah's face for something, hope, perhaps, or understanding. "Just promise me you'll be careful," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I promise," Jonah said, his heart steadying with each word. "And I'll make sure you're safe too. We'll figure this out, together." With that, Jonah stood up, feeling a surge of determination. He was ready to confront Marcus, to fight for his dreams, and to reclaim his life. The path ahead was uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure. He would not let anyone dictate who he could be. The time for change was now, and he was prepared to take the first step toward his freedom. Jonah stood at the edge of his old neighborhood, a familiar yet distant place. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow that felt both comforting and alien. He took a deep breath, letting the fresh air fill his lungs. Today was the day he had chosen to leave home, to step into a world where he could be free to pursue his art, away from the burdens that had weighed him down for so long. As he walked down the street, memories flooded his mind. He thought of the countless hours spent sketching in his room, the colors blending together to form his dreams. "I will be an artist," he whispered to himself, determination rising within him like a flame. He felt a mix of excitement and fear coursing through him. Leaving was not just about seeking freedom, it was about letting go of the past and embracing a future he had yet to define. Jonah paused for a moment, looking back at the house he had grown up in. It stood there, solid and unyielding, but he no longer felt the same connection. The weight of his decision pressed heavily on his chest, but he knew he had to move forward. "This is for me," he murmured, turning away to continue his journey. As he reached the bus station, he spotted a few other artists gathered around a mural, their laughter and voices filling the air with a sense of camaraderie. Jonah's heart raced. He approached them, feeling a mix of nervousness and hope. "Hey, is this where the art community hangs out?" he asked, trying to sound casual. One of the artists, a young woman with bright blue hair and paint-splattered clothes, turned to him with a smile. "You bet. We're just planning our next project. Want to join us?" Her enthusiasm was infectious, and Jonah felt a spark of excitement in response. "Sure, I'd love to," he replied, his voice steadying as he stepped closer. The group welcomed him warmly, introducing themselves and sharing stories of their artistic journeys. Jonah felt a sense of belonging that he hadn't experienced in a long time. He realized that this was the freedom he had yearned for, a space where he could express himself without judgment. After a few hours of brainstorming, the group decided to create a mural that represented the theme of freedom. Jonah suggested using bright colors and images that reflected their individual experiences. "Art is about expressing who we are," he said passionately. "Let's show everyone what freedom means to us." The others nodded in agreement, their faces lighting up with inspiration. "That's a great idea, Jonah," one of the artists said. "Let's make it something we can all be proud of." They began to sketch their ideas on a large canvas, each stroke filled with hope and possibility. Meanwhile, back at home, Vivian sat alone in the living room, staring at the empty walls that felt colder without Jonah's presence. She had spent the day reflecting on her choices, realizing that her desperation had pushed her son away. "I never wanted this for him," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I thought I was protecting him." As she looked around, the silence became unbearable. She grabbed her phone and called Jonah. The ringing felt like an eternity, but finally, she heard his voice. "Hello? Jonah," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you in that position. I hope you find what you're looking for." Jonah paused, feeling the weight of her words. "Thank you, Vivian. I need to be true to myself now. I hope you can find your own path too." "Take care of yourself, Jonah," she replied softly, a hint of hope breaking through her sadness. As Jonah hung up the phone, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. He knew the road ahead would not be easy, but he was ready to embrace it. Surrounded by his new friends, he picked up a brush and began to paint, pouring his heart into every stroke. This was his new beginning, a step toward a life filled with art, dreams, and the freedom he had longed for. With each color that blended on the canvas, Jonah felt lighter. He was no longer just a boy caught in a web of expectations. He was an artist, and this was only the beginning. Share Jonah's journey if you believe that pursuing your dreams can lead to true freedom and self-discovery. Leave a comment about a moment when you took a leap of faith and how it changed your life. Subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one.